Have you ever watched the man you love destroy your life, while believing every lie whispered by the woman who wants to replace you? That's exactly what happened to Soo-yeon on the night that shattered everything she thought she knew about her husband, her marriage, and the child growing inside her. The rain was relentless that evening in Seoul, drumming against the windows of the Han Corporation's executive penthouse on the 42nd floor of the Hanam-dong Tower. Soo-yeon pressed her hand against her swollen belly, 5 months along now, and watched the city lights blur through the water-streaked glass. The view from this height usually calmed her, made her feel like she was floating above the chaos of the world below. Tonight, it only made her feel alone. She had prepared Junho's favorite dinner, braised short ribs, the way his grandmother used to make them, perfectly seasoned japchae with crispy vegetables, fresh kimchi from the market in Insadong. The rice cooker hummed softly in the background, filling the penthouse with the comforting scent of home. It was their anniversary, 3 years since the garden wedding with cherry blossoms falling like pink snow. 3 years since she had promised to love him in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, for richer or for poorer. She hadn't known then how thoroughly those vows would be tested. When the door finally opened at 11, 3 hours after he'd promised to be home, she turned with a smile that died the moment she saw his face. Junho stood in the doorway like a stranger. His designer suit was immaculate, his tie perfectly knotted, but his jaw was tight and his eyes were cold as the November rain. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows of the hallway, Soo-yeon caught a glimpse of red stilettos retreating toward the elevator. The same red stilettos she had seen in the office 2 weeks ago. The same stilettos that belonged to Secretary Yoon. "We need to talk," he said. No greeting. No apology for being late. No glance at the dinner growing cold on the table. No acknowledgement of the date, of the anniversary, of the effort she had put into making this night special. "Junho, I know what you did." The words hit her like a physical blow. She steadied herself against the kitchen counter, one hand instinctively protecting her belly where their child, their miracle baby, conceived after 2 years of treatments and heartbreak, was growing. "What I did." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I don't understand." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his designer shoes leaving wet prints on the marble floor she had chosen when they decorated the penthouse together. She remembered how he had laughed at her indecision, how he had finally said he would love any floor as long as she was standing on it. "Secretary Yoon showed me everything." His voice was like ice. "The embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the money you've been stealing from my company for the past 2 years. Soo-yeon felt the room spin. The lights of Seoul blurred, then doubled, then tripled behind him. "Embezzlement? Junho, that's insane. I've never—" "Don't." His voice cracked like a whip, silencing her mid-sentence. "Don't lie to me anymore. I've seen the documents, your signature, your authorization codes. Everything traces back to you." "That's impossible." She reached for him, desperate to make him understand, desperate to touch the man she had loved for 5 years. But he stepped back as if her touch might contaminate him, as if she carried some disease he didn't want to catch. "I've never touched anything related to Han Corporation's finances. I'm an interior designer. I don't even have access to—" "You had access to me." His laugh was bitter, hollow, the laugh of a man who had convinced himself he had been betrayed. "I trusted you. I gave you everything. I let you into my home, my life, my company. And this is how you repay me, by stealing millions while carrying my child." The baby kicked, hard, as if protesting the accusation alongside its mother. Soo-yeon pressed both hands against her stomach, tears streaming down her face. "Junho, please, listen to me. Someone is lying to you. Someone is setting me up." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush. "Think about this. I've never asked you for money. I've never shown any interest in the company's finances. Why would I suddenly— The evidence speaks for itself." He pulled an envelope from his coat, cream-colored, expensive, the kind used for official documents, and threw it on the counter between them. "Divorce papers. Sign them tonight. I want you out of this penthouse by morning." "You can't be serious." Her voice was barely a whisper. 3 years of marriage, 5 years of love, a baby growing inside her, and he was throwing it all away because of papers he had seen for 5 minutes. "Our baby. I'll have my lawyers handle custody after the birth." His voice was clinical now, businesslike, as if he were negotiating a contract rather than destroying his family. "Until then, stay away from me, stay away from my company, and stay away from Secretary Yoon." At the mention of that name, something clicked in Soo-yeon's mind. Secretary Yoon. Ha-yoon. The woman who had joined Han Corporation 8 months ago, with impeccable credentials, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The woman with the red stilettos who had been working late with Junho almost every night for the past 3 months. The woman whose perfume Soo-yeon had smelled on her husband's collar more times than she could count. "Ha-yoon," she breathed, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. "She's behind this, isn't she? She's the one who—" The slap came so fast she didn't see it coming. His palm connected with her cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side, her ear ringing, her skin burning with the imprint of his hand. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on the edge of the Persian rug she had brought back from their honeymoon in Istanbul. Time seemed to slow as she fell. Her back hit the glass coffee table first, then her head. The crash was deafening, or maybe that was just the sound of her world shattering. She felt something warm and wet spreading beneath her head, saw Junho's face transform from anger to shock to something that might have been fear. Then darkness. When Soo-yeon opened her eyes, she was surrounded by white ceiling, white walls, white sheets that smelled of antiseptic and despair. A machine beeped steadily beside her, marking time in electronic pulses. Sunlight streamed through window blinds, casting bars of light across her bed like a prison cell. "You're awake." She turned her head, slowly, painfully, every movement sending shockwaves through her skull, toward the voice. A woman in a white coat stood by the window, clipboard in hand, her expression carefully composed in that neutral mask doctors learned in medical school. Her name tag read, Dr. Kim Mi-ran, Obstetrics and Gynecology. "Where?" Soo-yeon's throat felt like sandpaper, her tongue thick and clumsy. "Where am I?" "Seoul National University Hospital. You've been unconscious for 3 days." The doctor moved closer, her shoes clicking softly on the linoleum floor. "Mrs. Han, I need to ask you some questions. Do you remember what happened?" The memories came flooding back like a dam breaking. Junho's accusations. The divorce papers lying on the counter next to the anniversary dinner. The slap that had echoed through the penthouse. The fall. "My baby." Soo-yeon's hands flew to her stomach, feeling the familiar curve still present beneath the hospital gown. The baby. The one good thing in all of this. "Is my baby—" "Your baby is stable, for now." Dr. Kim's voice was gentle but firm. "You experienced significant trauma, Mrs. Han. The fall caused a concussion, bruising to your spine, and considerable stress to your body. We had to administer medication to prevent premature labor." She paused, her eyes searching Soo-yeon's face. "You're lucky you didn't miscarry. Another few centimeters in the wrong direction, and we might be having a very different conversation." Soo-yeon closed her eyes, feeling tears leak from beneath her lids. Her baby, her miracle baby. She had almost lost everything. "Mrs. Han, I need to know, did someone push you? Hit you?" The doctor's voice was quiet but insistent. "The nature of your injuries suggests—" "I fell." The lie came automatically, the words she had been trained to say all her life. "Don't make waves. Don't cause trouble. Don't bring shame to your family." "I just fell. Dr. Kim's eyes said she didn't believe it, but her pen moved across the clipboard anyway. Your husband came to the hospital when you were first admitted. He spoke to the staff, verified your insurance information, and left instructions that you should be discharged as soon as you're medically stable. She hesitated, something flickering in her expression. He asked me to give you this. Another envelope. Another set of divorce papers. This time with a sticky note attached in Junho's precise handwriting. Sign these. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Soo-yeon stared at the papers until the words blurred. 3 years of marriage, 5 years of love, a baby growing inside her. And it all came down to this, a stack of documents and a sticky note. Mrs. Han. Dr. Kim's voice softened, and for a moment she wasn't a doctor anymore, just another woman who recognized the signs of a life falling apart. Is there anyone I can call for you? Family? Friends? Family. The word tasted bitter in Soo-yeon's mouth. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, leaving her with nothing but debt and a small inheritance that she had invested wisely. So wisely that it had eventually saved Han Corporation from complete financial ruin during the tech crisis of 2019. But Junho didn't know that. No one knew that. The secret she had kept for 5 years now pressed against her chest like a physical weight. There's one person, she said finally. Park Ji-hai. She's in my phone contacts. 5 years ago, Soo-yeon had been a young interior designer with a talent for numbers and a secret portfolio of investments that most hedge fund managers would envy. Her parents hadn't been wealthy. Her father was a school teacher, her mother a seamstress. But they had taught her the value of money and the power of compound interest. The inheritance they left her was modest. 80 million won, roughly $70,000. Most people would have used it to pay off debts, buy a car, put a down payment on a small apartment. Soo-yeon had different plans. She had studied the market obsessively since high school, reading Warren Buffett and Benjamin Graham, analyzing charts and trends, making imaginary trades in notebooks that she filled with calculations. When the inheritance came, she was ready. Over the next 5 years, she turned $70,000 into $50 million. A combination of smart investments, perfect timing, and a willingness to take calculated risks that paid off spectacularly. By the time she was 24, she could have retired comfortably. By 26, she could have bought a penthouse in Gangnam. But she didn't want a penthouse. She wanted something else entirely. She had been watching Han Corporation for months when the tech crisis hit. The company had overextended, made bad bets on emerging markets, trusted partners who turned out to be frauds. The vultures started circling. Hostile investors, corporate raiders, men who saw Junho's struggling company as nothing but meat to be carved up and sold. Soo-yeon had seen the articles. Young CEO fights to save family legacy. Han Corporation on the brink of collapse. Third-generation heir refuses to surrender. She didn't know Junho personally, had never met him. But something about his determination moved her. Something about the way he refused to give up, even when everyone else was telling him it was over. Here was a man who could have walked away with his trust fund and his dignity intact, but instead chose to fight for his employees, his family's name, his father's dream. So she made a decision that would change both their lives. The anonymous investment came through a shell company she had created specifically for the purpose. $50 million, appearing at exactly the right moment, when Han Corporation's stock price was at its lowest, when the hostile takeover was hours away from succeeding, when Junho was preparing to accept defeat. The money stabilized everything. The stock price recovered. The hostile investors backed off. Han Corporation survived. No one ever knew where the money came from. The shell company dissolved immediately after the transaction, its records sealed, its ownership buried under layers of legal protection. Soo-yeon had covered her tracks so thoroughly that even the best forensic accountants would never find the truth. She had never planned to meet Junho. She was content to watch from afar, satisfied that her investment had served its purpose. But fate, or perhaps destiny, had other plans. 2 years later, they met at a charity gala for children's education. He was the rising young CEO who had miraculously saved his family's company. She was the talented designer who had just completed the renovation of Seoul's most prestigious hotel lobby. They were introduced by mutual friends and ended up talking for hours. About art, about business, about the way the lights of Seoul looked from the river at midnight. He made her laugh. She made him feel understood. And when he asked for her number at the end of the night, she said yes, before she could think of a reason to say no. He never asked about her finances. Why would he? She was a working designer, talented, but not wealthy. He assumed she was comfortable but modest, the kind of woman who appreciated nice things but didn't need them to be happy. She never volunteered the information. Why would she? How do you tell someone you secretly saved their life before you even met them? How do you explain that the money that rescued his company came from a woman he hadn't known existed? The truth felt impossible to tell, so she kept quiet. She assumed the secret would remain buried forever. She had been wrong. Soo-yeon. The voice on the other end of the line was rough with sleep. It's 6 a.m. What's wrong? Unni. Soo-yeon's voice broke on the word, the dam finally cracking. I need help. 20 minutes later, Park Ji-hai's battered sedan pulled up to the hospital entrance. Ji-hai was 33, with short-cropped hair, and the kind of no-nonsense attitude that came from growing up poor in Busan and fighting for everything she had. She was a photographer for the same design firm where Soo-yeon had worked before her marriage. The only friend who had stood by her when everyone else had started treating her differently after she became Mrs. Han. What the hell happened to you? Ji-hai's eyes widened as she took in Soo-yeon's bruised face, the stitches visible at her hairline, the hospital bracelet still on her wrist, the small bag of belongings clutched against her pregnant belly. Did Junho do this? I fell. Bullshit. Ji-hai yanked open the passenger door with more force than necessary. Get in. You're staying with me until we figure this out. They drove in silence through the gray Seoul morning. The city was waking up around them. Businessmen hurrying toward subway stations. Students rushing to early classes. Street vendors setting up their carts for the breakfast rush. Delivery trucks clogged the narrow alleyways of Myeongdong. A group of elderly women practiced Tai Chi in a small park near the river. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 4 days ago, before Soo-yeon's world had shattered. Ji-hai's apartment was small, but clean. A 1-bedroom in a modest building near Hongdae. The walls were covered with her photographs, cityscapes, portraits, a series of images she had taken during a trip to Vietnam. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, accumulated over years of thrift store visits and lucky finds. She made tea while Soo-yeon sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. The familiar ritual of boiling water and steeping leaves seemed to take an eternity. Tell me everything, Ji-hai said finally, pressing a warm cup into her friend's hands. And I mean everything. From the beginning. So Soo-yeon did. She told Ji-hai about Ha-yoon, the secretary who had appeared out of nowhere 8 months ago, with perfect credentials and an even more perfect face. She told her about the subtle changes in Junho's behavior, how he had started coming home later, how he had become distant and distracted, how he had stopped asking about her day or telling her about his. She told her about the late nights at the office, the business dinners that stretched into the early morning hours, the way Junho had started looking at her like she was a stranger in their own home. She told her about the perfume she had smelled on his collar, about the lipstick stain she had found on his shirt, about the text messages he had started deleting as soon as they came in, and then she told her about the accusation, the embezzlement, the documents that supposedly proved she had been stealing from Han Corporation for 2 years, the divorce papers, The slap, the fall. That's insane, Ji-hai said flatly when she finished. You don't even have access to the company's financial systems. You've never shown the slightest interest in corporate finance. I know. Soo-yeon's hands tightened around her cup, the heat seeping into her cold fingers. But whoever set me up knew exactly what they were doing. The documents look legitimate. Even Jun-ho. Her voice caught, snagging on the memory of his face, his rage, his absolute certainty that she had betrayed him. Even my own husband believed them without question. Ji-hee was quiet for a long moment, her photographer's eyes studying Soo-yeon's face with the same intensity she brought to her work. Then she reached for her phone. What's the secretary's full name? Yoon Ha-yoon. Why? Because I have a friend who works in background checks, corporate security for one of the chaebols. Let me make some calls. 3 days later, Ji-hai burst into the apartment with fire in her eyes and a folder thick with printed documents. I knew it, she said, slapping the folder down on the coffee table hard enough to make the ceramic coasters rattle. That woman is a snake with a very specific agenda. Soo-yeon picked up the folder with trembling hands. Inside were records, financial records, property records, company registration documents, birth certificates, death certificates, all tracing an intricate web that led back to one person. Yoon Ha-yoon. Real name, Shin Ha-yoon. Daughter of Shin Tai-woo. Who's Shin Tai-woo? Soo-yeon asked, though something in the pit of her stomach already knew the answer would change everything. He was a major shareholder in Han Corporation. Ji-hai's voice was grim. Back in 2019, he was one of the leaders of the hostile takeover attempt, the one that failed when your husband's miracle investor showed up. The room seemed to tilt. Soo-yeon gripped the arm of the couch, feeling the blood drain from her face. Wait, you mean the mysterious anonymous investment that saved Han Corporation? It destroyed Shin Tae-woo. Ji-hai sat down heavily beside her friend, her expression troubled. He had leveraged everything on the takeover succeeding. His company, his personal assets, his family's home. When the investment came through and the takeover failed, he lost it all. His company went bankrupt. His wife left him. He sold his house, his cars, everything. And then, he died of a heart attack 6 months later. They found him alone in a studio apartment in Incheon. His daughter found the body. Soo-yeon felt sick. She had known the investment would have consequences. Money always did. But she had never imagined this. She had never thought about the people on the other side, the ones who would lose when Han Corporation survived. And his daughter. Wants revenge. Ji-hai pulled more documents from the folder. I did more digging. Ha-yoon has been planning this for years. After her father died, she changed her name, dropped Shin and took her mother's maiden name instead. She went to university, got degrees in business and accounting, built a completely new identity. Why didn't anyone catch this? Han Corporation must do background checks. She was careful. The name change was legal, and she did it right after turning 18. Her university records, her work history, her references, everything was built from scratch. The old Shin Ha-yoon essentially ceased to exist. Ji-hai shook her head in reluctant admiration. She spent 5 years becoming someone new, someone who could get close to Jun-ho. And then she positioned herself to be hired at Han Corporation. 8 months ago, as his personal secretary, the one person who would have access to financial documents, to his schedule, to his trust. Ji-hai met Soo-yeon's eyes. Everything, the affair, the embezzlement accusations, the divorce. It's all part of her plan to destroy your husband the way she believes he destroyed her father. Soo-yeon's blood ran cold. But Jun-ho didn't destroy her father. He didn't even know about the hostile takeover details until it was already failing. He was just trying to save his company. Ha-yoon doesn't know that. As far as she's concerned, Jun-ho orchestrated everything, The strategic timing, the mysterious investor, the collapse of her father's consortium. She's convinced he's the villain of her story. Ji-hai paused. And now she's using you to bring him down. The baby kicked, as if demanding attention, reminding Soo-yeon that there was more at stake here than just her marriage or her reputation. She pressed her hand against her stomach, thinking of the documents in the divorce papers, thinking of the money she had invested 5 years ago, thinking of all the ways fate had twisted and turned to bring her to this moment. "There's something I never told you," she said quietly, "about the anonymous investor." Ji-hai's eyes widened as the truth spilled out. The inheritance, the investments, the $50 million that had saved Han Corporation and unwittingly destroyed Shin Tae-woo. "You're the one," Ji-hee breathed when Soo-yeon finished. "You saved Junho's company before you even met him. You're the mysterious investor everyone wondered about for years." Yes. The word felt like a weight lifting from Soo-yeon's shoulders, the first time she had ever spoken the truth aloud to another person. And now Ha-yoon is destroying my life because of it. Does Junho know? Does anyone know? No one knows. Not even Junho. Soo-yeon laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the small apartment. He thinks I'm a thief who married him for his money. He has no idea that I'm the reason he still has a company at all. Silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Then Ji-hai leaned forward, her expression fierce. "Then we need to make him understand." But making Junho understand proved impossible. He refused Soo-yeon's calls. Every attempt went straight to voicemail, his recorded message, once so familiar and warm, now feeling like a wall between them. He blocked her messages. The delivered notifications stopped appearing, her words disappearing into a digital void. When she tried to visit Han Corporation's headquarters, security escorted her out of the building before she could reach the elevator. The guards were polite but firm, their hands on her arms gentle but unyielding. "We have orders, Mrs. Han," one of them said, not meeting her eyes. "You're not allowed in the building. I need to speak with my husband. Please." "I'm sorry. Those are our instructions." She tried writing letters. They came back unopened, marked "Return to Sender" in red ink. She tried sending emails, no response. She even tried reaching out through mutual friends, but everyone had taken Junho's side, the wronged husband, the victim of his scheming wife. Meanwhile, Ha-yoon was tightening her grip. The news broke 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, signed in a lawyer's office, with Soo-yeon on one side of the room and Junho on the other, neither of them looking at each other. Han Corporation CEO announces engagement to secretary. The headlines screamed. In every photo, Ha-yoon smiled radiantly on Junho's arm, her designer dress and diamond ring flashing for the cameras like weapons. Soo-yeon watched the press conference from Ji-hai's couch, her hand pressed against her now 6 months pregnant belly. The morning sickness had passed, but a different kind of nausea churned in her stomach. "I'm grateful to have Ha-yoon by my side," Junho said into the microphones, his voice carrying the slight rasp it always had when he was tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked older than he had a month ago, older and somehow smaller, as if something essential had been drained out of him. "She's been my rock during this difficult time. Her support has meant everything." "Mr. Han," a reporter pushed forward, microphone extended. "What about the allegations that your ex-wife embezzled from your company? Will there be legal action?" Junho's jaw tightened. Beside him, Ha-yoon's smile flickered with something that looked like satisfaction, a flash so quick that Soo-yeon might have imagined it. "My legal team is handling the matter. I won't be commenting further. Turn it off." Soo-yeon's voice was flat. "Please." Ji-hai reached for the remote, but before she could press the button, another reporter shouted a question that made both women freeze. "Mr. Han, there are rumors circulating that the 2019 anonymous investment that saved your company may have come from someone connected to you personally. Can you comment?" On screen, Junho frowned, confusion crossing his features. I have no idea what you're talking about. The investor's identity was never discovered. Sources suggest the investment may have been traced. Some are saying it came from, that's enough. Ha-yoon stepped smoothly in front of her fiancé, her smile never wavering, her voice carrying the practiced calm of someone who had prepared for exactly this moment. Mr. Han has made his statement. Thank you all for coming. The press conference ended, but for Soo-yeon, something had just begun. Someone's investigating the investment, she said slowly, her mind racing. Someone's trying to trace the money. Is that possible? Ji-hai asked. You said the shell company was dissolved. You said the records were sealed, not destroyed. If someone with enough resources wanted to find the truth. Soo-yeon's heart was pounding. Ji-hai, if Ha-yoon discovers that I was the anonymous investor, if she proves that I'm the one who inadvertently caused her father's downfall, she'll use it to destroy you completely. She'll twist it to make you look like a manipulator. Someone who planned everything from the beginning. That's exactly what she'll do. Soo-yeon's hands were shaking. She'll say I saved the company to position myself for the long game. That I married Junho to get access to everything. That the embezzlement was just the next phase of my master plan. We can't let that happen. No. Soo-yeon's voice hardened. We can't. The next weeks were a blur of fear and planning. Soo-yeon knew she had two choices. She could run, disappear with her unborn child, start a new life somewhere Ha-yoon would never find her, where the past couldn't touch them. Or she could fight, expose Ha-yoon's true identity, reveal the embezzlement fraud, and prove to Junho that his new fiancé was the real enemy. The second option meant revealing her own secret. It meant admitting that she had saved Han Corporation, that she had never told Junho the truth about her wealth, that the foundation of their marriage had been built on a well-intentioned lie. It also meant risking Ha-yoon's retaliation. If the woman was willing to fabricate embezzlement charges and orchestrate a divorce, what else might she be capable of? But when Soo-yeon felt her daughter kick, they had found out the gender at the last ultrasound. A private moment in a doctor's office that Junho should have shared. She knew running wasn't an option. Her child deserved better than a life on the run. Her child deserved a mother who fought. She started gathering evidence. Through Ji-hai's contacts, she found a forensic accountant willing to analyze the embezzlement documents. His name was Dr. Park Sung-jin, a former professor who now worked as an expert witness in financial fraud cases. He agreed to review the materials pro bono after Ji-hai told him the story. These are good forgeries, he said after 3 days of analysis, spreading the documents across his cluttered desk. Very sophisticated. Whoever created them understood how Han Corporation's financial systems work. They knew the right terminology, the right formatting, the right approval processes. But they're not perfect. He pointed to a series of numbers on one of the pages, his pen tracing patterns only he could see. The timestamps on several documents are inconsistent with Han Corporation's actual financial schedules. Corporate authorizations don't happen at 2 a.m, and they certainly don't happen on national holidays when the offices are closed. That could prove the documents are fake? It raises questions. He moved to another page. And the authorization codes? These codes weren't even created until 6 months after the supposed theft occurred. It's like finding a document signed with a date of 1776 but written on paper that wasn't invented until 1800. Can you prove they're fake? Soo-yeon asked, hope fluttering in her chest. Definitively? With access to Han Corporation's original records, yes. I could demonstrate conclusively that these documents were created after the fact. Dr. Park's expression grew troubled. Without that access, though, it's your word against whoever created these. And whoever created them was very, very careful. Access. She needed access to Han Corporation's internal systems. Access that Ha-yoon had made sure she would never get. The answer came from an unexpected source. Director Choi Min-soo had worked at Han Corporation for 30 years, longer than Junho had been alive. He had known Junho's father, had mentored the young CEO through his early struggles, had been the steady presence in the background while flashier executives came and went. He was the kind of man who remembered everyone's birthday and the names of their children, who stayed late to help junior employees with their projects, who had never lost his temper in 3 decades of corporate warfare. He was also, as it turned out, deeply troubled by what was happening to the company he loved. Mrs. Han. His voice on the phone was cautious, but kind, carrying the weight of many sleepless nights. I was sorry to hear about your situation. Director Choi. Soo-yeon gripped the phone tighter, her heart racing. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you believe I stole from Han Corporation? A long pause. In the background, she could hear the sounds of the office, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the low murmur of voices, normal sounds, the sounds of her old life. No, he said finally. I don't believe it. I've watched you for 3 years, Mrs. Han. I've seen how you treat the staff, how you support your husband, how you've never shown the slightest interest in the financial side of things. You're not a thief. Then help me prove it. Another pause. Longer this time. Meet me tomorrow. The cafe on the corner of Gangnam Station Exit 3, 8 in the morning. Director Choi arrived with a briefcase and a worried expression, his gray hair more disheveled than she had ever seen it. He looked like a man carrying a heavy burden, which she supposed he was. I can't give you official documents, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. The cafe was half empty at this hour, the morning rush still an hour away. That would be corporate espionage. I could go to prison. I understand. But I can tell you what I've observed. He folded his hands on the table, his wedding ring catching the light. And what I've observed troubles me deeply. What he had observed was damning. Ha-yoon had been systematically positioning herself to take control of Han Corporation's finances. In the 8 months since her arrival, she had convinced Junho to give her access to accounts that even senior executives couldn't touch. She had been restructuring approval processes, moving key personnel, installing her own allies in crucial positions. She's been meeting privately with shareholders. Director Choi continued, his voice low. The ones who were loyal to the old consortium, the ones who wanted the hostile takeover to succeed. She's building a coalition. A coalition for what? I don't know yet, but I know this. She's not just after revenge. She wants the company, all of it. She wants to finish what her father started. And Junho doesn't see it? Mr. Han sees what she wants him to see. The director's eyes were sad, filled with the grief of watching someone you've mentored walk blindly toward destruction. He's not a bad man, Mrs. Han, but he's always been too trusting. He believes in people's goodness, assumes the best until proven otherwise. It's his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Soo-yeon thought of the young CEO who had fought so hard to save his family's company, the man who had made her laugh at a charity gala, the husband who had held her hand through fertility treatments and cried with joy when they finally saw 2 pink lines on the test, the man who had believed Ha-yoon's lies without question. How do I reach him? She asked. He won't talk to me. He won't even look at me. Director Choi reached into his briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. The Han Corporation Anniversary Gala is next month. It's the biggest event of the year. Every major shareholder, every important client, every media outlet will be there. I know. Junho and I plan to announce my pregnancy at the gala. The memory ached like an old wound, like pressing on a bruise that hadn't healed. That was before. Ha-yoon has planned her own announcement. The director's voice was grave. She intends to present evidence that your anonymous investment was actually a front for a long-term embezzlement scheme. She's going to claim that you've been stealing from Han Corporation since before you even met Mr. Han. Soo-yeon's blood ran cold. That's impossible. The investment saved the company. How can she twist that into... She's clever. Director Choi pushed the envelope across the table. According to her version, you positioned yourself as a savior to gain access. You made yourself indispensable. You married the CEO, and then you spent years slowly draining the company's resources, secure in the knowledge that no one would suspect the woman who had once saved them. That's insane. It's also exactly what she's going to tell 500 of the most influential people in Korean business. He tapped the envelope. This is an invitation to the gala. I can't guarantee, Mr. Han will listen to you. But if you have evidence to counter Ha-yoon's claims, this is your only chance to present it. The invitation felt like fire in Soo-yeon's hands. She stared at the elegant script, the embossed Han Corporation logo, the date that would determine everything. There's something else you should know, Director Choi said, his voice dropping even lower. Ha-yoon has been meeting with Kim Dong-woo. The name hit Soo-yeon like a cold wave. Kim Dong-woo was one of the original investors in Shin Tae-woo's failed takeover consortium. He had lost less than the others. He had been smart enough to pull out early. But he had never forgiven Han Corporation for the embarrassment. She's building an alliance, Soo-yeon realized. She's not just trying to destroy Junho's reputation. She's preparing for another takeover attempt. I believe so. Director Choi's face was grave. If she can discredit you completely, if she can prove that the original investment was fraudulent, she can potentially unwind the legal protections that kept the vultures at bay 5 years ago. The company would be vulnerable again. And this time, Junho wouldn't have a mysterious savior waiting in the wings. Exactly. Soo-yeon felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. This wasn't just about her marriage, or her reputation, or even her baby. This was about the company she had saved, the legacy of Junho's father, the livelihoods of thousands of employees, the future of everything the Han family had built. Director Choi, I need to ask you something. She met his eyes steadily. If I fail, if Ha-yoon wins, what happens to you? The old man's smile was sad but resolute. I'll be fired, of course. Ha-yoon has already identified me as a threat. She's been working to undermine my position for months. He shrugged. I'm 67 years old, Mrs. Han. I could retire tomorrow and live comfortably. But I've given 30 years of my life to this company, and I'm not going to let it be destroyed without a fight. Why are you helping me? Because I loved Mr. Han's father. The director's eyes glistened, memories of a man long dead flickering behind them. He was a good man who built something real. He treated his employees like family. He believed in second chances and honest work. His voice caught. And I won't stand by while his son destroys his legacy because of a woman's vendetta. The next few days, Soo-yeon threw herself into gathering intelligence. Ji-hee's network of contacts proved invaluable. Photographers knew everyone, saw everything, and were often invisible to the people they observed. Through one of Ji-hee's friends who worked events at the Shilla Hotel, they learned that Ha-yoon had been meeting regularly with a group of investors in a private dining room. Through another contact who worked in corporate law, they discovered that legal documents were being prepared, documents that could challenge the legitimacy of the 2019 investment. She's thorough, Ji-hye said one evening, spreading photographs across her coffee table. The images showed Ha-yoon entering various buildings, meeting with men in expensive suits, leaving restaurants with briefcases that hadn't been there when she arrived. She's been planning this for years, every move calculated. Then we need to be more thorough. Soo-yeon picked up one of the photographs, Ha-yoon leaving what looked like a law office. Who's her lawyer? If we can find out what legal strategy she's pursuing. Already on it. Ji-hye grinned. My friend's sister works as a paralegal at Park & Associates. She's doing some discreet digging. Ji-hye. Soo-yeon hesitated. You're taking a lot of risks for me. If any of this gets traced back to you, then I'll deal with it. Ji-hye's voice was fierce. You're my best friend, Soo-yeon. You gave me a job when no one else would hire a photographer with a criminal record. You never judged me, never treated me like I was less than anyone else. She reached across the table and squeezed Soo-yeon's hand. I'm not going to let that snake destroy you. Not while I'm breathing. Soo-yeon felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what I did to deserve a friend like you. You were kind, Ji-hee said simply, in a world full of people who aren't. 2 weeks before the gala, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Soo-yeon was reviewing financial documents in Ji-hee's apartment when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, a Seoul area code, but not one she recognized. Mrs. Han? The voice was female, young, nervous. My name is Park So-young. I work at Han Corporation, in the finance department. Soo-yeon's heart began to race. How did you get this number? Director Choi gave it to me. He said you could help, that you were the only one who could stop what's happening. What do you mean? What's happening? A long pause. Then, Secretary Yoon asked me to do something illegal, and I have proof. They met in a small cafe in Itaewon, far from the usual haunts of corporate Seoul. Park So-young was younger than Soo-yeon had expected, barely 25, with the anxious energy of someone who had stumbled into something far bigger than herself. I'm an accountant, she explained, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. Junior level. I've only been at Han Corporation for 2 years. She took a shaky breath. Secretary Yoon approached me 3 months ago. She said she needed help with a special project, something confidential. She promised me a promotion, a raise, access to opportunities I could never get otherwise. What did she ask you to do? At first, small things. Pulling reports, compiling data, nothing unusual. But then, So-young reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. Then she asked me to create documents, financial records that showed transactions that never happened, authorization codes that were backdated. Soo-yeon's breath caught. The embezzlement evidence. I didn't know what it was for at first. She told me it was for an internal audit, that we were testing the company's security systems. By the time I realized what she was really doing, So-young's eyes filled with tears. By then, I had already created the documents. I was already complicit. Why are you coming forward now? Because I saw what happened to you. So-young met her eyes for the first time. I saw the press conference. I saw your husband, your ex-husband, announcing his engagement while you were pregnant and alone. And I knew that I had helped make that happen. Her voice cracked. I can't live with that, Mrs. Han. I can't sleep, can't eat, can't look at myself in the mirror. I need to make this right. You understand what this means, Soo-yeon said carefully. If you come forward, if you testify against Ha-yoon, your career will be destroyed. You might face criminal charges yourself. I know. So-young's jaw tightened with resolve. But at least I'll be able to live with myself. At least I won't be part of destroying an innocent woman's life. Soo-yeon reached across the table and took the young woman's hands. Thank you, she said softly. You have no idea how much this means. There's more, So-young said. Secretary Yoon has been keeping files, detailed records of everything she's done, everyone she's talked to, every payment she's made. She thinks she's covering her tracks, but really she's been documenting her entire conspiracy. Where are these files? On her personal laptop. The one she keeps in her office at Han Corporation. So, Young's eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. Director Choi has access to that office. If he could get the laptop, even for an hour, we could prove everything. Soo-yeon's mind was racing. We could expose her entire plan. It was risky. It was possibly illegal. It was also their best chance. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Ji-hee helped Soo-yeon compile every piece of evidence she had gathered. Dr. Park's forensic analysis of the embezzlement documents, with detailed explanations of the timeline inconsistencies and forged authorization codes. The background check on Ha-yoon revealing her true identity as Shin Ha-yoon, complete with birth certificates and name change records. Financial records from 2019 proving that Shin Tae-woo had been planning a hostile takeover, including his loan documents and investment statements. And finally, most damning of all, the original documents from Soo-yeon's shell company proving beyond doubt that she was the anonymous investor who had saved Han Corporation. "This is going to change everything," Ji-hee said, staring at the folder. "Once Junho sees this, he'll know the truth about both of you." "That's what I'm afraid of." Soo-yeon's voice was quiet. "He'll know I lied to him. He'll know I kept this secret for our entire marriage. He'll know our relationship was built on something I never told him." "You kept a secret because you loved him. She lied because she wanted to destroy him." Ji-hye gripped her friend's shoulders. "Those are not the same thing. Will he see it that way?" Ji-hye had no answer. The night of the gala arrived with a storm. Lightning flickered across the Seoul skyline as Soo-yeon stood before the mirror in Ji-hye's apartment, examining her reflection. At 7 months pregnant, she couldn't fit into any of the designer gowns she had worn during her marriage, the ones hanging in a closet she no longer had access to. Instead, she wore a simple black dress that Ji-hye had altered to accommodate her belly, elegant in its simplicity, dignified in its restraint. "You look beautiful," Ji-hye said, appearing behind her. "I look pregnant. Beautiful and pregnant." Ji-hee pressed the folder of evidence into her hands. "Are you ready?" Soo-yeon thought of everything that had brought her to this moment. The investment, the charity gala, the marriage, the betrayal, the fall, the baby growing inside her, her daughter, who would enter the world in 2 months, whether her father was there or not. "Ready," she said. The Han Corporation anniversary gala was held at the Grand Hyatt Seoul, the same hotel where Soo-yeon had designed the lobby renovation 5 years ago. She walked through those familiar doors now as a guest, or more accurately, as an intruder. Director Choi met her in the foyer, his tuxedo immaculate, but his expression tense. Ha-yoon moved up her presentation. "She's going to speak in 15 minutes, not the scheduled 30. Then I need to get to Junho before she does. He's in the main ballroom, but Mrs. Han..." The director hesitated. "Security has been instructed to remove you if you're spotted." Ha-yoon gave the orders herself. "Then we'd better not get spotted." They entered through a service corridor that Soo-yeon remembered from the renovation project, a back route used by staff to move supplies without disturbing guests. The route was longer, more circuitous, but it brought them to a side entrance that opened directly into the ballroom. The space was magnificent, crystal chandeliers reflecting off polished marble floors, tables draped in white silk, champagne flowing like water. Seoul's elite mingled and laughed, their jewelry sparkling under the warm lights. Politicians, CEOs, heirs to fortunes that predated the Korean War, all gathered to celebrate Han Corporation's success. And there, at the center of it all, stood Junho. He looked tired, Soo-yeon noticed. The lines around his eyes were deeper than she remembered, the set of his shoulders more rigid. His smile, as he greeted guests, seemed forced, the performance of happiness rather than the real thing. Beside him, Ha-yoon sparkled in a red gown that probably cost more than Ji-hye's entire apartment, her arm possessively linked through his. "I need to get closer," Soo-yeon murmured. "Wait." Director Choi's hand caught her arm. "Look." Ha-yoon was moving toward the stage, where a microphone and presentation screen had been set up. A technician was connecting a laptop, the laptop that undoubtedly contained her fabricated evidence. "She's starting early," Director Choi said. "You need to move now." Soo-yeon took a deep breath, pressed her hand against her belly for courage, and stepped into the ballroom. She made it approximately 10 steps before Ha-yoon spotted her. The other woman's expression flickered, surprise, then fury. then something cold and calculating. She said something to Junho, who turned. Their eyes met across the crowded room. For one heartbeat, Soo-yeon saw something in her husband's face, something like pain, like longing, like the ghost of the love they had once shared. His hand moved slightly, as if he wanted to reach for her. Then his expression hardened. He raised his hand and gestured sharply toward the security team. "Mrs. Han." Two guards materialized on either side of her. "We need you to leave." "I'm not going anywhere." Soo-yeon's voice carried further than she intended. Heads began to turn. Conversations faltered. "Not until my husband hears the truth." "Ex-husband." Ha-yoon's voice rang out from the stage, amplified by the microphone. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward the unfolding drama. "And what truth would that be, Mrs. Han?" "The truth about how you've been stealing from his company for years. The truth about how your so-called anonymous investment was really the first step in a long-term embezzlement scheme?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Soo-yeon saw phones being raised, cameras flashing. The press, invited specifically for tonight's announcement, was getting far more drama than they had anticipated. "That's a lie," Soo-yeon said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around her. "And you know it, Shin Ha-yoon." The name landed like a bomb. Ha-yoon's face went pale. At the edge of the stage, Junho frowned. "What did you call her?" "Her real name." Soo-yeon reached into her folder and pulled out the background check documents. Shin Ha-yoon, daughter of Shin Tai-woo, the man who tried to take over Han Corporation in 2019. The man who lost everything when the mysterious investor saved your company. "That's ridiculous." Ha-yoon's voice had lost some of its confidence. "My name is Yoon Ha-yoon. I don't know what—" "You changed your name after your father died." Soo-yeon stepped forward, shaking off the security guards who seemed uncertain whether to restrain her or let the drama play out. "You spent 3 years creating a new identity, fabricating credentials, positioning yourself to infiltrate Han Corporation. Everything you've done, seducing my husband, framing me for embezzlement, convincing him to divorce me, it's all been part of your revenge." "Revenge." Junho's voice was sharp. "Revenge for what?" "For the anonymous investment that saved your company and destroyed her father." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the confrontation unfolding at its center. 500 of Korea's most powerful people stood frozen, champagne glasses in hand, watching a family implode. "The investment saved us," Junho said slowly. "Why would she want revenge for—" "Because her father bet everything on your company failing." Soo-yeon's heart was pounding, but her voice remained steady. "He led the hostile takeover. He leveraged his entire fortune on Han Corporation's collapse. When the anonymous investor stepped in, your company survived, but his didn't. He lost everything. He died 6 months later." Junho looked at Ha-yoon, confusion and doubt warring on his face. "Ha-yoon, is this true?" For a moment, Ha-yoon's mask slipped. Soo-yeon saw the hatred beneath. 5 years of hatred, nurtured and refined into a weapon. The little girl who had found her father's body in that empty apartment. The woman who had rebuilt herself piece by piece for one purpose only. "You don't know anything about my father," Ha-yoon hissed, her composure cracking. "He was a good man, a brilliant man. He built his company from nothing, worked 18-hour days, sacrificed everything for his family. And your precious Han Corporation destroyed him." "Your father tried to destroy Han Corporation first," Soo-yeon replied, her voice steady. "He leveraged everything on a hostile takeover. He gambled with other people's money, other people's futures. When he lost, he blamed everyone but himself. He lost because someone interfered." Ha-yoon's voice rose. "Someone appeared out of nowhere with $50 million and ruined everything. For years, I wondered who it was. I hired investigators. I searched through records. I followed every lead." Her eyes narrowed. "And now I know. It was you. You destroyed my family. I saved a company full of innocent people. Your father was trying to gut it for parts, to sell off the pieces, to throw thousands of employees out of work. Soo-yeon stepped closer. I didn't even know your father existed when I made that investment. I didn't care about him at all. I cared about the young CEO who was fighting to save his family's legacy, about the workers who would have lost their pensions, about the communities that depended on Han Corporation for their livelihoods. Pretty words. Ha-yoon's smile was ugly. But we both know the truth. You saved the company because you wanted something. You wanted the CEO. You wanted the wealth, the status, the power. You're no better than I am. You're just better at hiding it. The difference between us, Soo-yeon said quietly, is that I never hurt anyone to get what I wanted. I never lied, never manipulated, never framed innocent people for crimes they didn't commit. You've spent 5 years destroying lives, including Junho's, including mine, including our unborn daughters. And for what? For revenge against a woman you never met, for something that happened half a decade ago. Don't you dare lecture me about revenge. Ha-yoon's eyes blazed. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. To watch your father wither away, to hear him cry in the night because he couldn't feed his family, to find his body alone in a room where the heat had been turned off because he couldn't pay the bills. Her voice cracked. He died thinking he was worthless. He died believing he had failed everyone who ever depended on him. And I swore on his grave that someone would pay. For a moment, just a moment, Soo-yeon felt something that might have been sympathy. Ha-yoon was a villain, yes, but she was also a daughter who had loved her father, who had watched him fall and had no one to catch her. Then the mask slid back into place. She's lying. Ha-yoon's voice was syrupy sweet again, pitched for the audience rather than for Soo-yeon. She's desperate. She knows I have proof of her crimes, so she's making up stories to deflect. Then show us your proof, Soo-yeon challenged. Show everyone your documents, and I'll show them mine. The crowd stirred. This was unprecedented. A public showdown between the CEO's ex-wife and his fiancé, each accusing the other of fraud. Ha-yoon hesitated. Then her smile returned, sharper than before. Fine. She gestured to the technician. Put the presentation on screen. Documents filled the massive display behind her. Financial records, authorization forms, transaction histories, all supposedly proving Soo-yeon's theft from Han Corporation. As you can see, Ha-yoon said smoothly, the evidence is clear. Lee Soo-yeon has been systematically... The timestamps are wrong. Everyone turned toward the new voice. Director Choi had stepped forward, his expression grim. What did you say? Ha-yoon's voice cracked. The timestamps on these documents. The director pointed to the screen. Authorization code AX4471 didn't exist until March 2021. But according to your evidence, it was used for a transaction in September 2019. He turned to the crowd. I've worked in Han Corporation's finance department for 30 years. These documents are forgeries. If you've been waiting for justice, if you're cheering for Soo-yeon right now, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's see what happens next. Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Shareholders demanded explanations. Security rushed toward the stage as Ha-yoon grabbed for the laptop, her carefully constructed scheme crumbling around her. This isn't over, she screamed, pointing at Soo-yeon. You destroyed my father. I saved your father's victim. Soo-yeon's voice cut through the noise like a blade. And now I'm going to tell everyone exactly how. She pulled the final document from her folder. The one she had hoped she would never have to reveal. The one that proved, beyond any doubt, the truth about the anonymous investment. 5 years ago, I made an investment that saved Han Corporation from collapse. $50 million funneled through a shell company I created specifically for that purpose. She held up the document, the original registration papers, signed with her own hand. I never expected to meet Junho. I never expected to fall in love with him. But when I did, I didn't know how to tell him that I was the one who had saved his company before we even knew each other existed. The ballroom was utterly silent. I'm not a thief. Soo-yeon's voice broke on the words. I'm the woman who saved the company you're trying to destroy. I'm the woman who loved your victim more than you could ever understand. And I'm the mother of his child. A child he abandoned because he believed your lies. She turned to Junho. He stood frozen at the edge of the stage, his face a mask of shock and dawning horror. You wanted to know who saved Han Corporation, she said softly. Now you know. It was me. It was always me. The aftermath of Soo-yeon's revelation was immediate and devastating, but not for her. Ha-yoon was arrested that night. The falsified documents, combined with Director Choi's testimony and the evidence that Soo-yeon had gathered, provided more than enough grounds for charges of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. As she was led out of the ballroom in handcuffs, her red gown trailing behind her, she screamed threats and curses that echoed off the marble walls. This isn't over, she shrieked. My father deserved better. You all deserve to suffer. No one responded. No one even looked at her. Junho watched his former fiancé being dragged away, his face ashen. Then he turned to Soo-yeon. You saved my company, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Before we met, before we were married, before any of this, you saved everything. Yes, and you never told me. I didn't know how. Soo-yeon's eyes burned with unshed tears. And then we fell in love, and I thought it didn't matter anymore. I thought what mattered was who we were together, not what I had done before. But if I had known... His voice cracked. If I had known, I never would have believed her lies. I never would have... hit me. The words hung in the air between them. Thrown me out. Divorced me while I was pregnant with your child. Junho flinched as if she had struck him. Soo-yeon, I loved you. The tears were falling now, streaming down her face. I loved you so much that I gave you $50 million before you even knew my name. I loved you so much that I married you without telling you, because I didn't want money to complicate what we had. And you... Her voice broke. You believed a stranger over me. You believed I was a thief. You hit me and made me fall and almost killed our daughter. Our daughter. The word seemed to stagger him. We're having a girl. Soo-yeon pressed her hand against her belly. I found out after you threw me out. I was alone in a friend's apartment with a concussion and bruises all over my body, and I found out I was having your daughter. Around them, the ballroom had emptied. The press had been ushered out, though not before capturing enough footage to guarantee tomorrow's headlines. The shareholders had dispersed, whispering among themselves about scandals and stock prices, and what this would mean for Han Corporation's future. Only Director Choi remained, watching from a respectful distance. I'm sorry. Junho's voice was raw with grief. Soo-yeon, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to... I don't need your apology. Soo-yeon wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I need you to understand what you did, not just to me, but to our child. She'll grow up knowing that her father threw her mother out on the street while she was pregnant. She'll grow up knowing that he believed lies instead of love. Please. Junho fell to his knees. Right there, in the middle of the now empty ballroom, the CEO of Han Corporation knelt before his pregnant ex-wife. Please give me another chance. Let me make this right. Let me be the husband you deserved. Let me be the father our daughter needs. For a long moment, Soo-yeon didn't respond. She looked at this man she had loved enough to save from ruin, enough to marry, enough to forgive 1,000 small hurts over the years. This man who had believed the worst of her without question. This man whose ring she had worn for 3 years and whose child she carried in her body. Get up, she said finally. Junho looked up at her, hope flickering in his eyes. I said get up. Her voice was steady now. CEOs don't kneel. He rose slowly, uncertainly. I'm not going to give you an answer tonight, Soo-yeon continued. I'm not going to forgive you because you're sorry, or because you finally know the truth. What you did, what you believed. That's not something that disappears because Ha-yoon is in handcuffs. I understand. His voice was small. I need you to know that I love you. That I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought... He couldn't finish the sentence. Love isn't enough, Soo-yeon said quietly. Love didn't protect me when you hit me. Love didn't keep a roof over my head when you froze our accounts. Love didn't hold me at night when I was terrified of losing our baby. She took a step back, toward the door. I need time. Junho. I need to see that you've changed. I need to know that you'll never believe lies about me again, no matter who tells them. How long? His voice was desperate. How long until you can forgive me? I don't know. She paused at the threshold, turning back one last time. But I know this. You have until our daughter is born to prove that you deserve to be in her life. 2 months. That's what you have. Then she walked out of the ballroom, leaving Han Junho standing alone among the empty champagne glasses and scattered programs of his company's anniversary gala. The next 2 months were a study in transformation. Junho threw himself into making amends with the kind of single-minded intensity he usually reserved for business deals. He publicly retracted all accusations against Soo-yeon, issuing a formal apology that was carried by every major news outlet in Korea. He testified against Ha-yoon at her preliminary hearing, providing evidence that helped build the prosecution's case. He set up a trust fund for his unborn daughter, not as a bribe, Soo-yeon understood, but as a gesture of commitment. Most importantly, he started therapy. He calls me every week, Ji-hai reported during one of her visits to Soo-yeon's new apartment, a lovely place that Director Choi had helped her find and Junho had insisted on paying for. He asks about you, about how you're feeling, about whether you need anything. And you tell him that you're doing fine, that the pregnancy is progressing normally, that you're not ready to talk to him yet. Ji-hai hesitated. Soo-yeon, I know what he did was terrible, but I've never seen a man work so hard to change. Soo-yeon rubbed her swollen belly, feeling her daughter kick in response to her touch. Is changing enough? I don't know. Ji-hee was honest as always, but maybe it's a start. The birth happened on a Tuesday. Soo-yeon's water broke at 3 a.m. Ji-hee drove her to the hospital, breaking several traffic laws in the process. The labor was long and painful, 18 hours of contractions and pushing, and nurses telling her to breathe. Just breathe. You're almost there. When it was finally over, when her daughter's cries filled the delivery room for the first time, Soo-yeon wept with a joy she had never known existed. She's beautiful, Ji-hai whispered, standing beside the bed as Soo-yeon held her newborn for the first time. Soo-yeon, she's absolutely beautiful. The baby was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of black hair, and eyes that seemed to hold all the wonder of the universe. Mina, Soo-yeon murmured, stroking her daughter's cheek. Her name is Mina. That's a lovely name. The voice came from the doorway. Soo-yeon looked up. Junho stood at the threshold, his face a mixture of awe and uncertainty. He held a bouquet of pink peonies, her favorite flowers, and looked as if he hadn't slept in days. Ji-hai told me you were here, he said quietly. I hope it's okay that I came. For a long moment, Soo-yeon didn't respond. She looked at this man, this flawed, broken, desperately trying man, and then at the baby in her arms. Come meet your daughter, she said finally. Junho crossed the room in 3 steps. He knelt beside the bed, not dramatically, not performatively, but simply because his legs seemed to give out beneath him. His hands trembled as he reached for the baby, as Soo-yeon carefully transferred their daughter into his arms. "Minna," he breathed, tears streaming down his face. "Her name means gentle and beautiful. It's perfect." "She deserves perfection," Soo-yeon said. "She deserves a father who will never let her down." Junho looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed and raw. "I'll spend every day of my life trying to be that father," he said, "and trying to be the husband you should have had from the beginning." "Not husband." Soo-yeon's voice was gentle but firm. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But you can be her father. You can be in her life. We can. We can see where that leads." "Okay." He cradled Minna against his chest, this tiny new person who was equal parts both of them. "Okay. Whatever you need. However long it takes." 6 months later, Soo-yeon walked into the Han Corporation boardroom for the first time. She wasn't there as Junho's ex-wife, or as the mother of his child, or even as the woman who had once saved the company from ruin. She was there as a shareholder, because 2 months after Minna's birth, Junho had signed over 15% of Han Corporation's shares to their daughter, with Soo-yeon as the legal guardian until Min-ah came of age. "Ladies and gentlemen," Junho announced to the assembled board members, "I'd like to introduce our newest major shareholder. Some of you may already know her story, some of you may not. But what you should all know is this: Han Corporation wouldn't exist without Lee Soo-yeon. She saved this company 5 years ago, and I was too blind to see it." He turned to her, his expression a mixture of pride and regret. "I spent years not understanding what I had. I won't make that mistake again." The board members applauded. Director Choi, still seated at his usual place, wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. After the meeting, Junho caught up with Soo-yeon in the hallway. "Can I take you to lunch?" he asked. "Minna's with the nanny until 3. We could talk." Soo-yeon studied him for a long moment. The dark circles under his eyes were gone. He stood straighter now, looked healthier, seemed lighter than he had been in years. Therapy, she knew. Therapy and the determination to be better. "Not lunch," she said finally, "but dinner. Friday night. You can pick me up at 7. Junho's smile was like sunrise breaking over the Han River. "Friday at 7. I'll be there." He was. 1 year after the gala that changed everything, Soo-yeon stood on the rooftop of the Grand Hyatt Seoul. The same hotel where she had designed the lobby, the same hotel where she had confronted Ha-yoon, the same hotel where her entire life had shifted on its axis. Below her, the city sparkled with a million lights. Behind her, the doors opened and Junho stepped out. "You wanted to see me?" he asked. "I made a decision," Soo-yeon said, not turning around. "About us." She heard him approach, felt him stop a few feet away, close enough to touch, far enough to give her space. "Whatever you've decided," he said quietly. "I'll respect it." Soo-yeon finally turned. In her hands was a small box, the kind of box that usually held jewelry. But when she opened it, what lay inside was a simple gold band. "This was my father's wedding ring," she said. "He gave it to me before he died. He told me to give it to the man who proved he deserved my heart." Junho's breath caught. "You broke my heart," Soo-yeon continued. "You shattered it into pieces so small I didn't think I'd ever put them back together. But you also spent a year proving that you've changed, that you're the man I hoped you could be when I first saved your company." She held out the ring. "I'm not saying I'm ready for marriage again, not yet. But I'm saying I'm ready to try, if you are." Junho took the ring with trembling hands. He slipped it onto his finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for him all along. "I'm ready," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been ready since the moment I understood what I almost lost." He pulled her into his arms, gently, carefully, mindful of all the ways he had hurt her before. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I've always loved you, even when I was too foolish to know it." "I know." Soo-yeon leaned into his embrace, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her cheek. "That's why I'm giving you one more chance." Below them, Seoul hummed with life. Somewhere in that vast city, their daughter slept peacefully in her nursery, unaware of the journey her parents had taken to find their way back to each other. And standing on that rooftop, holding the woman who had saved him in every way possible, Han Jun-ho made a silent vow. He would never let her down again. Not ever. The final chapter of their story wasn't written that night on the rooftop. It was written over years, years of small moments and quiet victories, years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and first days of school, years of Jun-ho coming home at reasonable hours, of putting his family first, of proving every single day that he had learned from his mistakes. Ha-yoon was convicted of fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. She spent 8 years in prison, plenty of time to contemplate how her revenge had destroyed only herself. When she was released, she moved to another country. Her name changed once again. Her vendetta finally extinguished. Director Choi retired at 72, with a celebration that brought tears to everyone's eyes. He had been the silent guardian of Han Corporation for decades, and his departure marked the end of an era. Ji-hee, ever the loyal friend, eventually married a kind man she met through her photography work. She remained Soo-yeon's closest confidant. The godmother to Min-ah, and later, to Min-ah's younger brother, Jun-seo. And Soo-yeon? Soo-yeon became more than the CEO's wife. She became Han Corporation's chief design officer, transforming the company's brand and image with the same creativity that had once caught Jun-ho's attention at a charity gala. She sat on the board of directors. She made decisions that shaped the company's future. Most importantly, she made sure that her story, the story of the woman who saved a company and then saved herself, would never be forgotten. 10 years after the gala, on the night of Han Corporation's 15th anniversary celebration, Soo-yeon and Jun-ho stood together at the same stage where Ha-yoon had once tried to destroy them. "I want to thank everyone who has made this company what it is today," Jun-ho said into the microphone, his arm around his wife's waist. "But most of all, I want to thank the woman standing beside me. The woman who saw something worth saving in this company, and in me, before I even knew it existed." He turned to Soo-yeon, his eyes full of the love that had been tested and tempered and proven true. "You were my savior," he said softly. "You still are." Soo-yeon smiled, the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. "We saved each other," she replied. "That's what love does." In the audience, Min-ah, now 10 years old, with her mother's eyes and her father's determination, clutched her little brother's hand and watched her parents with pride. She was too young to understand everything they had overcome. But she knew this. Her mother was the strongest person she had ever met. Her father worked every day to deserve them. And together, they had built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. As the applause thundered through the ballroom, as Jun-ho pulled Soo-yeon close and kissed her in front of 1,000 witnesses, one thing was absolutely certain. The mistress had tried to destroy them. She had failed, and they had won.